It's 2:47 a.m. You're exhausted, but your brain is on fire. A forgotten email becomes a crisis. This isn't just stress, it's a neurological hijacking. Welcome to the psychology of racing thoughts. The clock reads 2:47 a.m. The room is dark, the house silent, the body exhausted. Yet the brain hums with an electrical urgency that defies logic. A forgotten email from 3 weeks ago suddenly feels critical. A minor disagreement from dinner metastasizes into a full-blown existential crisis. You are not simply awake, you are being held hostage by your own cognition. This phenomenon, known as sleep-onset insomnia with racing thoughts, affects an estimated 30% of adults at some point in their lives. Unlike simple sleeplessness, this variant is characterized by intrusive, repetitive, and often anxious thought patterns that flare precisely when the brain should be powering down. The bed becomes a stage for an unscripted monologue of worry, planning, and regret. The psychology behind this nocturnal takeover is not merely about stress. It involves a complex interplay of neurobiology, cognitive control, and learned associations that researchers have only begun to fully map. Sleep onset is not a passive process of shutting off. It is an active neurological transition mediated by the shift from the brain's default mode network, or DMN, to sleep-promoting circuits. The DMN is a network of interconnected brain regions active when the mind is at rest and not focused on external tasks. Normally, it is suppressed as we drift toward sleep. But in individuals with racing thoughts at night, this suppression fails. Functional MRI studies show that insomniacs exhibit hyperarousal of the DMN during the pre-sleep period, particularly in the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, regions responsible for self-referential thought, autobiographical memory, and mental simulation of future events. When these remain active, the brain continues to generate a narrative stream about the self that is difficult to interrupt. Simultaneously, the salience network, which tags stimuli as important or threatening, remains on high alert. This is evolutionarily adaptive if a predator is near, but maladaptive when the only threat is a looming work deadline. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis, is the body's central stress response system, and it plays a pivotal role in racing thoughts at night. Normally, cortisol levels decline in the evening to facilitate sleep. However, studies have found that individuals with insomnia and racing thoughts show elevated evening cortisol levels compared to good sleepers. This sustained activation primes the brain for vigilance rather than rest. Dr. Rachel Manber, professor of psychiatry at Stanford University, explains the clinical reality. Many patients describe feeling as though their brain is stuck in gear. They are physiologically tired, but their central nervous system is still in a state of low-grade fight or flight. The racing thoughts are not the cause of the insomnia, they are a symptom of this underlying neurobiological hyperarousal. It's a feedback loop. The more the mind races, the more the brain interprets this activity as a sign that something must be wrong, which fuels further arousal. The result is a relentless cycle that turns the quiet of night into a psychological battleground. Not all racing thoughts are created equal. Cognitive researchers distinguish between two primary forms, rumination and worry. Rumination is a repetitive focus on past events, often involving themes of failure, regret, or loss. Worry, by contrast, is future-oriented and involves catastrophic predictions about what might go wrong. In the context of insomnia, both patterns emerge, but they serve different psychological functions. Rumination at night often reflects unresolved emotional processing. The brain, freed from daytime distractions, attempts to make sense of past events. However, without the cognitive resources available during waking hours, such as problem-solving capacity and social support, this processing becomes stuck in a loop. Worry, on the other hand, represents a misguided attempt at control. The insomniac brain believes that if it can just think through every possible scenario, it will feel prepared. In reality, this hypervigilance prevents the disengagement necessary for sleep. A 2018 study found that individuals who engaged in high levels of pre-sleep worry took significantly longer to fall asleep and reported poorer sleep quality. One of the most influential frameworks for understanding racing thoughts at night is the attention-intention model. This model posits that insomnia develops when an individual shifts from a passive, automatic approach to sleep, where sleep happens naturally, to an active, effortful one where sleep becomes a goal to be achieved. When a person begins to worry about not sleeping, they direct attention toward monitoring for signs of sleepiness. This monitoring itself is arousing. The intention to fall asleep creates performance anxiety, and the perceived failure to do so generates further distress. The racing thoughts are not just a symptom, they are a consequence of trying too hard to control an involuntary process. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more elusive it becomes. This paradox is at the heart of many sleep problems. Understanding this model is crucial because it reveals that the solution is not to fight the thoughts, but to change the relationship with them. It's about letting go of control and allowing sleep to find you. So what can be done to break the cycle? Evidence-based strategies focus on calming the hyper-aroused brain and changing the relationship with racing thoughts. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI, is the gold standard. It includes techniques like stimulus control, which involves using the bed only for sleep, and sleep restriction, which consolidates sleep time to increase sleep drive. Another powerful tool is cognitive restructuring, which challenges the catastrophic thoughts that fuel worry. Mindfulness-based approaches also show promise. By observing thoughts without judgment, individuals can reduce the emotional charge attached to them. A simple technique is the cognitive shuffle, where you focus on random, neutral images to interrupt the narrative stream. The goal is not to eliminate thoughts, but to reduce their power. With practice, the brain can learn to associate the bed with rest, not rumination. The night doesn't have to be a battleground, it can be a sanctuary. If you found this valuable, consider sharing it with someone who struggles with sleepless nights. The science of sleep is still unfolding, but understanding your own mind is the first step toward reclaiming the night.